There is a version of you that has already stopped talking about it. He is not planning the transformation anymore. He is already inside it. And the strange part is this: nobody around you knows he exists yet. You have spent months, maybe years, announcing intentions. New year, new me. Monday, fresh start. A caption under a gym photo that lasted 4 days. Every time the words came first and the results never caught up. Somewhere between the talking and the doing, something in you learned that speaking about change felt almost as satisfying as making it. That is the trap. Marcus Aurelius did not write his private reflections to be admired. He wrote them to correct himself alone without applause. The path forward starts with a decision most people are unwilling to make. Disappear for a while and let the silence do the work. Every time you explain your goals before you have earned them, you spend energy that should have gone into the work itself. This is not a minor inefficiency. It is a pattern that quietly protects you from failure by giving you the emotional reward of intention without the risk of execution. You feel like you have already done something because you have described it out loud, confidently to someone who nodded and told you that sounds great, but nothing has moved. The Stoics understood discipline differently than most modern self-help culture does. Epictetus taught that a person becomes what they repeatedly choose to focus on and act upon, not what they repeatedly claim to value. Values without repeated action are simply opinions you hold about yourself. And opinions do not build a body, do not build a skill, do not build a mind capable of enduring difficulty. Think about the last time you told someone your plan. Did the telling make the plan easier, or did it make it feel finished before it began? This is where most people quietly fail. Not because they lack ambition, but because they mistake description for progress. There is a specific kind of person who says less and less as they get closer to becoming someone. Watch closely and you will notice it. The ones who are actually changing stop narrating the change. They get quiet. They get private. Not because they are hiding, but because the noise of explanation has nothing left to offer them. The work has become the only conversation that matters. So the first shift is not physical. It is not even about training yet. It is about closing your mouth long enough to let your actions start speaking a language your words never could. Here is what almost nobody tells you about real discipline. It does not feel motivating. It feels boring, repetitive, and often lonely, especially in the beginning before any visible results exist to reward you. Most people quit not because the pain is too intense, but because the process is too plain. They were promised a montage. They got a Tuesday. Seneca wrote extensively about the difference between those who prepare for hardship and those who are constantly surprised by it. He argued that the person who has mentally rehearsed difficulty suffers less when it arrives because they expected it rather than resenting it. Apply that here. If you expect studying to feel exciting every single day, you will abandon it the moment it doesn't. If you expect training to feel rewarding immediately, you will quit the first week it feels like nothing is changing. But if you accept in advance that most of this process will be quiet, unglamorous repetition with no audience and no immediate payoff, you remove the shock that usually causes people to stop. This is the part where the video's promise becomes uncomfortable. Coming back so strong that no one recognizes you does not happen through inspiration. It happens through hundreds of unremarkable hours that nobody sees and nobody applauds. You will not feel like a different person after one good week. You might not even feel different after one good month. And that gap between the effort you're putting in and the transformation you can't yet see is exactly where most people give up and go back to talking instead of doing. The ones who continue anyway are not more talented. They have simply made peace with being unseen for a while. Are you willing to be unseen long enough to become someone worth noticing? Understanding Stoicism intellectually changes nothing on its own. You can quote Marcus Aurelius from memory and still wake up tomorrow and choose the version of yourself that hits snooze, skips the workout, and reopens the same book you have been starting for 3 months. Knowledge without repeated action is simply a more articulate form of standing still. This is the section where the video stops being comfortable. If you are serious about the promise in the title, here is the actual mechanism. Stripped of motivational packaging, pick one physical discipline and one mental discipline and commit to both today, not next Monday. The physical discipline could be training your body with consistency, even briefly, even imperfectly. The mental discipline could be genuine study, not scrolling disguised as research, but focused, deliberate learning that builds a skill you currently lack. The specific choice matters less than the consistency behind it. Musonius Rufus taught that philosophy without practical application in daily conduct was essentially decoration, words performed rather than lived. Discomfort is not a side effect of this process. It is the mechanism itself. If it does not feel difficult, you are not applying enough resistance to actually change. Character is not built in the moments when discipline feels natural. It is built in the specific moment you want to stop and choose to continue anyway, with nobody watching and no reward waiting immediately on the other side. This is the difference between a person who has read about self-mastery and a person who is actually practicing it. One collects ideas, the other collects evidence through repeated action that they are no longer who they used to be. Which one are you choosing to be for the next 30 days starting today? The people around you did not build your bad habits, but they often unconsciously maintain them, not out of malice, out of familiarity. They know a version of you that laughs at the same jokes, skips the same responsibilities, and stays comfortably unremarkable alongside them. When you start changing, that familiar version of you starts to disappear, and some people, without realizing it, will resist that disappearance because it disrupts what they know. This is not a call to isolate yourself with hostility toward others. It is a call toward boundaries. Intentional solitude used correctly is not about punishing anyone or proving superiority. It is about protecting the fragile early stages of a new identity, long enough for it to become sturdy. A new habit is fragile. It can be talked out of existence in one evening surrounded by people who liked you better before. So you create space, fewer distractions, fewer unnecessary conversations that drain energy, meant for building something. Quieter mornings, a phone left in another room, a schedule that no longer bends to everyone else's convenience. This will feel strange at first, even guilty, because you are used to being available, agreeable, easy to reach. The tension you feel is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is the sign of an old identity losing its grip, while a new one has not yet fully formed. What happens once that new identity becomes visible to the people who knew the old one is where this story is heading next. Eventually, the private repetition starts producing something undeniable. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily, the way erosion reshapes stone without announcing itself. You stop needing to mention your goals because your calendar already reflects them. You stop needing reassurance from other people because your own consistency has become the evidence you use to look for externally. This is the actual transformation, and it happens internally long before anyone else notices it externally. The body changes, the mind sharpens, the tolerance for discomfort expands. But the deeper shift is quieter than any of that. You stop performing discipline and simply become disciplined. The way a person doesn't perform honesty, they are simply honest. When people from your old life eventually notice, and they will, their reaction is not the goal, it is only a byproduct. Some will be encouraging. Some will feel oddly threatened by a version of you that no longer needs their validation. Both reactions are irrelevant to why you did this. You did not train and study in silence to earn a reaction. You did it because the old version of you, the one who explained more than he executed, was no longer someone you could respect living as. Coming back so strong that no one recognizes you was never about shocking other people. It was about no longer recognizing the person who used to make excuses in the mirror every morning. Philosophy becomes real the moment it turns into a schedule. So here is what this looks like in practice, starting today, not next week. Choose one specific area of study you have been postponing, and give it 20 focused minutes before you consume anything else this week. Choose one physical discipline, and complete a version of it today, even a small version, because consistency beats intensity every time intensity fails to show up twice. Write down, somewhere you will actually see it, the specific excuse you use most often to avoid discomfort, because naming it removes some of its power over you. For the next 30 days, reduce how often you announce your goals to others and increase how often you simply do the work without narration. This is not about secrecy for its own sake. It is about redirecting energy that used to leak out through explanation back into execution. Picture, briefly, the version of you 30 days from now who has kept this pact without exception. Not a fantasy version with dramatic results, but a realistic one. Slightly stronger, noticeably more focused, harder to distract, calmer under pressure. That person is not lucky. That person simply stopped negotiating with themselves every morning. Your excuses will still show up tomorrow, quieter but persistent. The only difference between you and the person you are trying to become is whether you keep listening to them or finally, consistently, stop. Everything discussed here returns to one uncomfortable truth. The transformation you want has been available to you the entire time. Disguised as boring, unglamorous, repeated effort, you kept postponing in favor of talking about it instead. Silence was never the punishment. It was the workshop. Study was never the delay. It was the foundation. Training was never the whole answer. It was the proof, repeated daily, that you meant what you said even when you stopped saying it out loud. If this reached something in you, leave a comment describing the one discipline you are done explaining and ready to simply start today. No announcement, no audience, just the decision. If you want to keep building this version of yourself alongside others walking the same quiet road, this channel exists for exactly that conversation. So consider staying for what comes next. Somewhere out there, a future version of you is already living proof that silence, study, and discipline eventually rearrange a person entirely. He is waiting on the other side of everything you have been postponing, and the only thing standing between you and him is your willingness to finally shut up and begin.